All right, let's jump right into this explainer. The first day, a mission to San Francisco, September 14, 1994. We are stepping directly into the shoes of a young missionary touching down in the Bay Area to kick off his service. It's a total fish out of water story. I mean, we're talking intense nerves, massive geographical culture shock, and ultimately a real moment of triumph. So, let's get into it.
When he first lands in Oakland, California, the sheer anticipation is captured perfectly in one quick journal entry. My real mission officially begins. Think about all the intense prep he'd gone through to get to this exact moment. You can practically feel that crazy mix of soaring excitement and, well, underlying terror just stepping off the plane. The starting gun is fired, and immediately, the vivid impressions start piling up.
And man, this sensory shock was immediate. Coming from the bone-dry climate of Utah, the second he walked out of those airport doors, bam, he hit a physical wall. The heavy Oakland humidity was this huge contrast to his home. It instantly signaled to his brain, okay, definitely not in Utah anymore. It wasn't just a change in scenery, it was this atmospheric shift that just dialed his nervousness right up.
Adding to all that shock was his first impression of his new leader, President Smart. Now, the president's wife, Sister Smart, was incredibly warm and welcoming, but President Smart, he was big, strict, and had this booming voice that immediately put our young narrator on edge. I mean, his boldness was on display right at baggage claim. He fearlessly asks a bellhop if he's going to get baptized and then turns around and encourages the missionaries to do the exact same thing with a waitress at a nearby Denny's.
That intense, intimidating personality really showed up when they sat down to actually eat at that Denny's. Recognizing this new arrival was an absolute bundle of nerves, the mission president tries to lighten the mood with a super deadpan joke. He looks the narrator right in the eye and casually mentions that they have a cardboard box for him at the mission home, and he will literally be living in it in downtown San Francisco.
And of course, taking him completely literally, our narrator misses the joke entirely. He just responds with a stunned, okay. He genuinely believed for a terrifying second that he was going to be sleeping in a cardboard box on the concrete. It perfectly captures how on edge and literal-minded he was in those first few hours. He's trying to warm up to the president, but anxiety is totally running the show here.
After eating, they head over to the mission home. It's perched on this beautiful hill across from the Oakland Temple with amazing views. This is where he gets his official assignment, downtown San Francisco. He's then grouped up with the APs, that stands for the Assistants to the President, loaded into a mission van, and the physical journey into the city finally starts. The actual geography of this drive really dictated his emotional state. Instead of taking the typical Bay Bridge, they head south over the super long San Mateo Bridge. He actually noted that it had a really recognizable sound as the tires hit the pavement, exactly like the bridge in the 1992 movie Sneakers. So they cross over, make a quick stop to drop off a sister missionary in San Bruno, and then turn north into the complete unknown.
Now, the tension in that van steadily rises. They had just dropped that first missionary off in a really nice suburban area in San Bruno. Our narrator is thinking, wow, missionaries really get hooked up. But yeah, that relief evaporated fast. As they drove further north toward the city, the hills just multiplied beyond anything you'd ever seen, and the neighborhood started looking significantly rougher with every passing mile. And the AP driving the van knew exactly what he was doing, purposefully building the suspense. They exit the freeway, navigate through this gritty neighborhood nestled somewhere between Haight-Ashbury and downtown SF, and the AP turns to our highly anxious narrator and goes, "Elder Bryant, what do you think about this area?" Looking out the window at these intimidating streets, he just answered honestly, "Well, it's kind of scary if you ask me." The second he admits he's scared, the AP parks the van and drops the dramatic reveal. Home, sweet home. It is just an immediate plunge into regret for our naive narrator. He internally panics, desperately hoping it's another joke. It wasn't. He grabs his suitcase and realizes he has to navigate through this heavy, locked security gate just to access the concrete stairs leading up to his new front door.
Making it up those stairs, he finally meets his new companion, Elder Hymas. Still reeling from the intense neighborhood and that heavy security gate, the narrator decides to use pure sarcasm to mask his absolute terror. When asked how he likes the apartment, he just says, "I love it." Without missing a beat, Elder Hymas fires back with his own heavy sarcasm. He looks around their highly modest place and says, "I know, this place is a lot bigger and nicer than my last place." For a split second, the narrator was genuinely shocked. He's wondering what kind of terrible, windowless dungeon his companion must have lived in before if this was considered a step up.
But then he realizes Elder Hymus is just messing with him. Honestly, that shock turned to laughter, and it completely breaks the immense tension in the room. It's this small, comforting moment of connection that finally starts to put him at ease.
And it turns out, Elder Hymus was exactly what our overwhelmed narrator needed. They bonded instantly over a shared love of sports. He finds out Hymus was a high school quarterback and a varsity basketball starter. Plus, having been on the mission for 7.5 months, he already knew the ropes. But most importantly, he was just a genuinely kind person. He even offered the exhausted newcomer a chance to take a nap right then and there. Though, let's be real, the adrenaline kept him wide awake. The apartment did have this nice bay window on the second floor, which offered a safe vantage point of their new environment. The two of them spent some time just looking outside, watching the electric Muni buses. Those are the public transit buses operating in SF, rolling down the streets. They observed the colorful, maybe a little crazy, but deeply interesting local characters passing by. Up there, safely watching the city in motion, he actually started to feel a little more comfortable. Eventually, though, Elder Hymus decides they need to get out and get a real lay of the land. Since our narrator loved tall buildings, they walked straight downtown, where he was just absolutely mesmerized by the skyscrapers. He hilariously noted in his journal that they probably looked exactly like oblivious tourists, just standing right there on the sidewalk, paper map in hand, constantly craning their necks to stare up at the skyline. Now, their very first official appointment that day really set up the climax of this whole journey. They had what's called a media referral. That's simply when someone sees a commercial or an ad and calls a number to request a video, a Book of Mormon, or a direct visit. This gave them a very specific and, as it turns out, a highly intimidating address to track down in the city. When they finally found the address, it was a massive environmental culture shock. It took them quite a while to locate, forcing them to navigate through this incredibly intimidating area, surrounded by garbage, heavy graffiti, and a large homeless population. For a young guy fresh out of Utah, on his literal first day, approaching this horribly looking place required absolutely peak courage. But standing just inside the door of this gritty exterior was a profound contrast. A man named Damon was waiting for them. Despite the scary environment outside, Damon was incredibly humble, very smart, and wonderfully welcoming. He invited them in, listened closely to their message, liked what they had to say, and readily agreed to set up a second appointment. It left our narrator feeling absolutely pumped. The dramatic irony of the whole situation was only revealed to them after they got back home. Sitting in their apartment, they found out that the specific location they had just visited was actually a project, city government housing that is often a highly dangerous place for outsiders to wander into uninvited. Our narrator realizes he had just successfully navigated notoriously tough turf on his very first outing, completely oblivious to the danger at the time. So, in just one single day, we see this massive transformation. By stepping entirely out of his comfort zone, facing his strict mission president, moving into a daunting neighborhood, and successfully teaching a humble man in the projects, his initial terror transforms into profound gratitude. He actually writes in his journal, "Even though it is a little scary, I am already starting to love this area I get to serve in." Looking back at this young missionary's first day in 1994, it really makes you wonder about your own fish-out-of-water experiences. How often do our greatest fears and those intense initial anxieties actually mask our most rewarding adventures? Sometimes pushing through that initial shock, whether it's the humidity, a locked gate, or a scary neighborhood, is the exact doorway we need for true connection and growth. Thanks for joining me for this explainer today, and I'll catch you next time.